Where we are headed today in public education in particular, I think is a slippery slope. We are going to use the public school system as an extension of basically our broader politics.
You know how we feel about charter schools. We'd like to know how you feel.
A lot of these charter schools are significantly underperforming.
In a state like Illinois, with a very strong Democratic Party presence and strong teacher unions, we are going to push that ideology through our public school system.
If I'm president, Betsy DeVos's whole notion from charter schools to this are gone.
This is much more than an education in a certification in teacher standards. It's really, it sounds like to me, trying to build the political base.
Our soul will be troubled as long as systemic racism is allowed to persist. We need to make equity and justice part of what we do every day.
The state of Illinois has proposed these standards, which essentially will govern how teachers are able to get licensure in Illinois. They're intentionally, I think, vague. They use the word progressive. And so they want teachers to understand and teach progressive viewpoints. That has an overtly political meaning to it, the word progressive.
They're not judged on their merits. Teachers can accept social justice work as part of the grade, as opposed to some firm metric.
The second word they used was activist.
They're focusing on activism that is one-sided, where they're not even hearing the other side because only one side matters.
If you affect change with no sort of tangible idea about how you're actually going to solve a problem you've identified, you very likely stand to make the problem much worse.
It does no good to have a bunch of illiterate revolutionaries. The public school system, and particularly teachers, should not be put in positions to dictate one view. And that's how you become culturally competent. And that's the problem. Let's just flip the script on this. If the state government of Alabama decided that teachers be trained in and have certain beliefs about life, about the Second Amendment, about what you might consider to be more culturally conservative issues, there would be outrage, and rightfully so.
You don't want that in your classroom. You want your kids to learn, critical thinking, learn all sides, learn how to debate all sides.
It's one thing to tell teachers that they should be aware of cultural differences. It's another thing entirely to tell teachers that they need to constantly be aware of their own unconscious bias. A, I can be culturally respectful of these individuals and treat them as individuals, while also thinking, B, I am an oppressor and I am irrevocably tainted by my certain aspects of my identity and generations past. Those are not reconcilable views in one human.
Less than 40% of students in this state, by the time they enter fourth grade, are reading on grade level. And that persists throughout their entire time in school. When we start to elevate sort of this wokeness or this ideology of we need to have activists and sort of that sort of deal, we are completely missing what is just foundational.
Are we losing teachers? Absolutely. I've been told before that I would be a good teacher, so that I would not be a teacher in a public school if it meant that on pain of losing my job, I would have to teach people things and tell people things that I knew were false.
We're in this weird time now where the people who are crying foul the loudest on equity, the people who are saying, there's so much injustice in this country, are the same ones saying, well, Black kids and Hispanic kids and poor kids, they just can't learn because they're in poverty, or they just can't learn because their mom is or their dad is in jail, or they just can't learn because they don't get 3 meals a day. All these things are important, for sure, but there are schools all around this country that are proving that very thing, that they're proving it wrong.
One of the things that frustrates me is that when we have people who say they are working on our behalf, but they constantly and continually keep lowering the standards for our children, as if our children are not smart enough, as if they're not bright enough and intelligent enough to meet the standard. And I think those type of policies hinder us in the long run.
There are a lot of you all in here that have overcome some crazy obstacles, and there are some of y'all in here that have overcome some crazy things, and it took a lot for you all to be sitting here today.
Chicago public school systems have failed young Black males. For a child to make it all the way to high school in a system and not be able to read, that is a total failure. We decided that we needed a charter school in our church simply because there were so many young people who were dropping out of school.
I had a student who came in and they had no drive, no credits. They were at the age of 20, and they just came into my office and said, "Ms. Robinson, I really need your help. I want to graduate. I have 2 kids. I have another one on the way." We created a plan for that student, and we told that student, if you stick to this plan, at the end, you will see the result that you came in to get. Now, he is in a career because he got certified in forklifting, and so he's able to support his babies, and that was his ultimate goal.
Even when we were working in cotton fields as slaves, they had night school. They came about and created this night school concept so that education was ingrained even then. And somewhere along the way, we have strayed away from that educational principle. It's our desire to make sure that these young people know that, listen, without an education, you are not going to survive. You cannot survive not knowing how to read. You cannot survive not knowing your history. It's impossible. So we want to make sure that we give these young people the tools that our ancestors were using, and so that they can survive in the future. And that is so important.
But there are a lot of people, teacher unions being some of the loudest voices, who will say, yeah, school choice has its roots in, sort of white supremacy. And who benefits from school choice? Poor, largely Black and brown students.
When you start to teach one way of thinking, you are taking away freedom. The beauty of being independent is you can think how you want. You can analyze things, get smarter, get wiser, change how you think even, right? Because you learn along the way. But if you're not taught that, then yeah, I think you're destroying freedom.
The people who are on the side of school choice, the people who were seeking to advance, fighting to advance these types of policies, we know that we have the moral high ground. We know that people who are opposed to these types of policies, when we look back on it, will say, those guys were on the wrong side of history.